Hi everybody, and welcome to Copilot Lead Speak. This is a new series where we're going to investigate and learn more about AI security, and in particular, Copilot for security. I'm your host, Sarah Young. I'm a senior cloud security advocate here at Microsoft. And in today's episode, our very first guest is Luis. Luis, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Sarah, for inviting me.
Before we go any further, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do at Microsoft?
Yeah, thank you for inviting me again. My name is Luis Vargas. I'm Vice President of AI. I focus specifically on a strategy for AI. And what that means is driving clarity and alignment across the company on where we are with regards to AI and where do we want to be in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months. The space is moving very, very quickly, so this is getting more and more interesting. And what we do across the company is thinking, what do we need to have ready to be able to support organizations and all of our customers across all of the different layers of the stack that we need for this AI. So you can imagine we have work in infrastructure, systems, platform, the models themselves, which is what most people talk about, and then the products that are built on top of this, both from Microsoft and from our customers. So that's my job. I love it. It's a super fun job. I've been doing it now for close to 7 years. I've been 15 years at Microsoft. So before doing this, I was working in our cloud and AI division, working on database systems and the early beginnings of Azure, the Azure cloud.
So, well, it sounds like you've been very busy for the whole 15 years you've been at Microsoft, but very busy for the last couple.
It's been fun.
So undoubtedly, 2023 was the year of AI. I mean, I think everybody was talking about AI all last year, and I think that's going to continue. So it feels like this is quite, and I know people have used this phrase before me, a transitional moment in tech. What would you say, what are you most excited about for what the future holds for the AI space?
Yeah, well, let me first talk about the transitional moment. There are two main components that came into the equation here that allow for this moment to happen. One is a new paradigm of how we interact with computers. So far, the history has always been humans have to learn how to communicate with computers. We have to learn their language. We need to understand how to interact with them. For the first time, computers now understand our language, whatever it is, right? Like I speak English and Spanish, and now computers understand my languages, and they understand a lot of other languages as well. So now we have this new paradigm where we can communicate through language, and then we can start adding other types of things that we as humans commonly use, like images and video and other types of things. So that's one aspect. The other aspect of this transitional moment is the ability to now offload some of the reasoning into this, we call them AI models, or these foundational models. So for the first time, these models have the capability of looking at a human request, looking at the thing or set of things that a human is requesting, and then think about it and try to define, how do I go and solve this? How do I define a plan? And what are the set of tools that I need to go and use to be able to solve this? So like, these are the two things that really created this transitional moment. Now, yes, everybody got super excited the past year. Obviously, there was a lot of exciting things happening. ChatGPT, which now pretty much everybody is using, our own Microsoft Copilot, right? Like it has transformed how people find answers to their questions. Instead of the traditional search, like now you have really an engine, as I said, that can just directly go and browse the web, find the relevant pieces of data, and then answer your questions. And a lot of others, like we have Copilot in M365, for example, so people who are using Teams and Office, Word and Outlook and PowerPoint and Excel and everything else, they all have this capability there. So everybody has been like super excited for this moment. Having said that, we have been preparing for this moment for a while, like many years. We have been preparing on the infrastructure side, building the supercomputer clusters that allow us to train these models, working very closely with our partner OpenAI in getting all of these models being trained. On the platform itself, like making sure that we are able to leverage these model capabilities effectively, right? How do you take a model and then use it in a production scenario? And then on top of this, how do we use all of these responsibly? And we have been working on our responsible AI standards for many years now, making sure that we are safe on how we use these models, as well as how do we protect all of the product scenarios that are going to use them, as well as how do we empower our customers as they build their own products on top of the platform to make sure that all of their applications are safe and responsible. So anyway, like the transitional moment happened last year, but we have been working and preparing for this for many years. And you asked me about excitement. What am I excited? There's so many things. Like I think the first thing is just the realization and the proof points that we're seeing that all of these products bring value to users and organizations. We're seeing all of the data and objective and subjective data from users of M365 Copilot, for example, saying I'm being much more effective at meetings, I'm being much more effective with my email, doing data analysis on top of Excel, generating PowerPoint decks. Like that's one of the things that I always wonder, why do I have to go and create this PowerPoint deck from scratch if I already have a document that pretty much describes what I want to say? So anyway, like now you can automate all of that. GitHub Copilot, for example, developers telling us, I feel a lot more in the moment now. I don't have to go and figure out like how do I use this particular function or how do I write this piece of code that I'm sure somebody has already spent a bunch of time thinking. Like how do we go and just help the users through all of this? And we see the data just showing once and again. People are seeing real value from that. So like I'm just excited of seeing the value. Obviously, the capabilities of these AI models continue improving. So like different versions of GPT-4 continue appearing. GPT-4V, which is for vision, so the GPT model that understands images, for example. So all of these models continue improving, and the capabilities keep increasing with that. And it's just fascinating to see all the new type of scenarios that we can support with them and that our customers are building with them as well. Beyond that, we are seeing customers and developers being able to extract even more capability out of these models that we even thought was possible before. Doing things like, we call it prompt engineering, like basically communicating with these models and being able to express in different ways what task you want the AI to complete and in which way you want it to complete it, and perhaps giving some hints to the AI to do it, and then getting a lot more capability out of these models than what we originally thought. And every month we continue finding new ways of getting that capability. So anyway, that's very exciting. Finally, what I'll say is, outside of like those particular areas that we work on, there's some new, very interesting areas that we, particularly through Microsoft Research, are working on. We had a couple of news that came out in the past couple of weeks. One was finding new chemical compounds, for example, that can attack the proteins behind some diseases like tuberculosis, for example, or coronavirus. So like a very interesting and powerful scenario, helping us find drugs and vaccines for things that in the past would have taken months or years, perhaps, now can take weeks. So that's one. The other interesting example is on material science as well. As we think about batteries, we have the news that we discovered a new compound that is able to support batteries with a lot less dependency on lithium. So that helps basically the life of the batteries. It helps to make sure that the batteries are safer as well, they're not as flammable, etc. So the AI in this case was working with humans researchers on being able to identify these new materials, for example, that in a traditional way, it will have taken months or years, and now it takes weeks only. So anyway, like it's just an exciting moment to be in.
I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, if there's so many things going on and it's changing so quickly, I think both you and I could probably talk for hours about all the cool things that are now possible with AI. Luis, you're a senior leader here at Microsoft, so you've got a great perspective, I'm sure, on what should be top of mind for organizations when they're implementing AI, because of course, it wouldn't be sensible just to put it into your environment willy-nilly. So what would be your advice and your thoughts that leadership should be considering when embarking on this AI journey that I think pretty much everyone has started now?
Yeah. Well, the first thing that I would say is AI is the most powerful tool that we had in our generation and very likely in future human generations. So it's a big responsibility to know how to use that tool for the best purposes and in the most responsible way. So as we think about that, and as the capabilities of AI evolve rapidly, we're thinking about multiple things like how do we use these capabilities in our products to bring the most value to users and organizations, right? So we think about, in the context of Microsoft Copilot, for example, to help people really find whatever answer they need to whatever question they have, or Copilot for M365 in the productivity side, or Copilot for Dynamics, for example, in the business side, or Copilot for security, for example, for security analysts. So we're always continually thinking, what are those scenarios where we can really help humans, right? And it's, in general, so these are scenarios where it involves substantial cognitive load, for example. There are repetitive tasks. These are tasks that are going to take a bunch of time that perhaps you would like your creativity to come and shine in a more interesting way and not spend so much time doing this repetition. So like that's just one aspect. The other aspect that we think about is how do we empower everybody else, developers and organizations, to go and build their own applications or their own copilots as well. And as we think about this, we're continually thinking, how do we help them minimize the time and effort that it takes to go from vision, because everybody's going to have their own set of ideas of what they would like to accomplish with AI, and how do we help them to accomplish that with the least amount of effort and in the least amount of time. So that's how we think about products versus platform. The commonality across all of these things is going to be safety and responsibility. And these are aspects that we have been thinking for many years, right? Even before this new AI moment. And here, what is going to be important is making sure that as people, including ourselves, are using these AI capabilities, that we hold ourselves to a high degree of responsibility in terms of, for example, reliability, right? We want to make sure that we can trust that AI is going to perform in a certain way. Things like privacy, for example, and confidentiality, make sure that always the data of humans and organizations is protected above anything else. Security and safety, making sure that the use of these AI models is going to be safe, irrespective of whether it is being used by good entities or in some cases by bad entities as well. We need to protect from that and make sure that all of this utilization is safe and responsible. So we have, for example, built a lot of tools that allow us to make sure that as we try to put these models in production, that they're going to perform according to our standards. So things like ensuring that they don't have any content that is going to be biased, for example, that is going to have racism or sexism or inappropriateness, for example. So we want to make sure that we're protected from that. So we have created, for example, a bunch of classifiers. And we make those classifiers available externally to our platform as well, so that everybody who builds these type of applications can protect them themselves. So we have all of these types of tools, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. Beyond the tools, we have a process as well. And basically, the process guarantees that every time that we release a new update into one of these products or copilots, that we go through a review process. And that review process, we have a set of executives that we call the DSB, the Digital Safety Board. And that DSB ultimately is responsible to ensure that any update that we do to any of our products and services adheres to these responsible principles.
So you touched on responsible AI and safety systems, which we know are very important, but I'm curious as to if you have any more things that you think that leaders should bear in mind on the AI security side of things specifically.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the things don't change. If you think about the general lower layers of the stack, like you still need to have authentication and encryption and data governance, for example. Now, some things are going to become even more important. Like if you have now an AI application, like a chatbot, that is going to be answering questions on top of your data, and you give access to all of your data, then you have to assume that the chatbot is going to answer the question, irrespective of where the data is. So even before, you needed to make sure that you have the right logs, for example, and the right governance on the data. It's even more important now, right? Because there is this entity that is going to look into what data it has access to and try to answer the question. So data governance becomes very important. So things like Microsoft Purview, for example, is going to be very relevant, right? And making sure that you understand levels of sensitivity, for example, that data is being labeled correctly, and that according to those levels of sensitivity, you decide who should have access to the data, including your applications with AI as well. So like I will say that's one aspect. Beyond that, and very specific to AI, we have the aspects of content safety, and there's going to be content safety both on the input side of things as humans interact with the AI, and you need to make sure that you are validating what that input is and that is appropriate for the context of your application, as well as safety of the output content as well as the AI, right? And that can be text, for example, or it could be images because you could be generating images as well. So you need to make sure that those text or images, once again, are going to be appropriate in the context of your scenario and your application. So we have all of those controls, as I said, and we have them as part of Azure AI content safety. So those are the things that we use, for example, and that our customers and any organization can use as well. Now, even more than that, with AI models, there are going to be new types of attacks as well. And we have talked about these new types of attacks where it's almost like social engineering. You can imagine humans trying to bypass the safety mechanisms in front of the AI models and try to get the AI models to do things that it's not supposed to do as well. So we have developed some classifiers, for example, for that as well. And there's some interesting attacks, like we even have names for those. And then we talk about them publicly, and we have some examples of how they look like. Things like meta-prompt hijacking, for example, which basically means you have your meta-prompt, which is what the creator of the AI application has defined as the guardrails of what the chatbot or the Copilot should do. And then you have some entity that is trying to do almost like social engineering on the model to bypass that. And it's possible to detect this. I mean, as humans, we know, right? Like we know if somebody's trying to get us to do something that we don't want to. And the same thing you can do in the case of AI. You can have some semantic understanding of like the input content that you're getting and trying to match it with, this seems like an attack. So like that's one type of attack, for example. And I'm sure this is not the last one, but we will continue discovering these attacks, being public about them, and offering content safety mechanisms for everybody to use, just as we are using them.
Yeah, I mean, of course, I'm a little bit biased here because I'm very interested in the security aspect of any technology. But what's really exciting is that coming up in some of our later episodes, we have some amazing folks who are in our security research teams and our red teams. And they're going to talk more as well about what Microsoft does, because I'm sure you'd agree, it's really fascinating.
It is fascinating.
And they do some great work. They're incredibly smart people.
Very hard, but very valuable work, yes.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I could talk to them all day.
It is.
Now, Luis, you knew this was coming because Copilot Leet Speak is a security series. So we're gonna delve into a little bit of security now. So we ask customers, and we do this with all of our Azure services, of course, to trust but verify the security controls that Microsoft implements at the platform layer. But could you talk a little bit about how that's relevant and a little bit about what we do specifically in the Azure Open AI space?
Yeah, I mean, let's start from Azure itself as a platform.
Yeah.
So for many years, we have been working on hardening Azure and make it super secure. And as a result, we see certifications, for example, from ISO and FedRAMP and a lot more. It's basically this auditing showing that Azure itself and the management of Azure is secure. Now, as we do this, we have introduced a bunch of controls to be able to guarantee the safety and security of applications, our applications and applications built by customers. So here's where you can start thinking about things like access control, for example, right? And we can think about Microsoft Entra, for example, right? In that space of authentication. Then you can think about secure networks, right? And you start thinking about Azure VNets and how do you ensure a secure and closed network where all of your application lives, including the aspects of AI, for example, right? You can have the Azure Open AI service and other pieces there, like Azure Search, for example, for grabbing data, your database systems, your blob storage, everything contained within the secure virtual network where you guarantee that all communication is encrypted so nothing else can look at it. If we talk about encryption, then we're going to have encryption also on the data. You can go and encrypt your blob storage, for example. You can encrypt even your communication channels, for example. You can have VPN tunnel between your organization and Azure as well, so all communication and the flow of communication is encrypted as well. We can even protect data inside of memory, for example, on the machines as well, right? We have confidential computing, which means that basically you have the secure enclave where the CPU basically is just going to decrypt the data as needed, right? And then there is basically an exchange there, a secure exchange between Key Vault and the processor, so that even in memory, the data is maintained encrypted as well. So we have like this end-to-end encryption as well. So all of this is basically going to help to provide the basis for security and safety. Now, if we think about AI applications specifically, as I said, Azure Open AI, for example, Azure Search, like these services that you use to build an AI application are going to support the same type of support for confidentiality, for example, for authentication, for encryption, etc. By the way, even confidential computing is now supported on GPUs with NVIDIA GPUs, for example, which means that as you try to execute these AI models, as you do the inferencing, right, that's how it's called, the inferencing inside of the GPU is also done in a confidential manner as well. So all of this applies basically across all of these things. You think even more specifically now, within the context of new AI applications and the new type of things that you have to think about, this is where we go back to what we discussed like 5 minutes ago. So we need to think about like content safety mechanisms, for example, right? Like how do you protect and how do you validate the input, what humans are sending to the AI model, as well as the output of the AI model, right? And making sure that it doesn't contain any inappropriate content. Another pieces that are going to be important is something like the meta prompt. And basically the meta prompt or system prompt, this is basically the piece of content that defines the personality of these chatbots or AI applications. This is what tells the AI model how it should behave. And we use it in all of our copilots, and our customers are using meta prompts as well. And as we build good meta prompts and good content of what to tell the agent, or how to tell the agent what to do and what not to do, we're making that available externally as well, so that we have good templates for how to write meta prompts, for example, as well. So anyway, like we continue investing in the space, but we have a very strong basis already with Azure. That basis applies to all of the new business and services that we built on top for AI. And then specific for AI, we are launching new features that allow you to protect that as well.
It's very exciting.
It is exciting indeed.
I know.
Yeah.
Luis, given your expertise and everything you've seen with all of our customers globally, what would be your top bits of advice for organizations looking to implement AI? Is there anything to be aware of, or any challenges that they should be cognizant of as they're starting this journey?
Well, I think the biggest challenge is that the space is evolving very, very rapidly, both from a research perspective as well as from the platform perspective. So there's a lot of new announcements coming, and sometimes it may be hard to keep track of all of these things. So I think to me, the main thing is just try to scope your interest on AI, at least in the beginning, to what are the most valuable things that you want inside your organization. Is it to make some particular process more productive, more effective? Is it to support your customers in a particular way? Because then you can start exploring how can AI, in a very practical and pragmatic manner, help you towards that particular objective. So start by identifying what are the things that you need to, or that you want to achieve. And then from there, we can start identifying where do you need to start from there. We have different options here. I would say, in general, the fastest and easiest options, if you just start with already some prepackaged service that contains everything that you need. So obviously, if something like Copilot for M365, for example, satisfies your needs, in that case, like the suite already provides everything that you need to get it started, right? Like the first day. So that's an easy way. Obviously, we have similar things with Dynamics, for example, or for security, or for other products in the portfolio. So if already this is going to meet the requirements that you have for your particular domain, that can help you. Now, if you want to go and create something completely different because your particular scenario is something that is very specific to you, then you're going to have to go and create an application. And as you think about creating an application, the first thing that I will say is start exploring the capabilities of the models. is just a new paradigm, right? And instead of having to start by how do I go and program a new application, it's like how do I communicate with AI and how do I get the outputs that I need. So start doing that. There is going to be a variety of AI models available in our platform in Azure AI Studio, for example. We have obviously the best models in the world from OpenAI with the GPT models. But beyond that, like we have a bunch of models for a bunch of other types of tasks as well. And these models are going to range on capability. They're going to range on a level of generalization. They're going to range on cost as well. So as you identify the specific tasks and the scenarios that you want to support, and as you start getting into the rhythm of exploring this AI thing, you're going to have different options. So play with the different options, see how they work for whatever you need. Now, beyond this, one thing that is going to be important no matter what is to think about safety and security and responsibility. Right? like that's not gonna change. So as I said, everything that we have learned and that we are learning as we build our own applications, we're making available through the Azure platform. So make sure that you go and learn how to use things like Azure Content Safety, for example, Microsoft Purview, obviously all of the aspects of Azure with VNets and encryption, and et cetera. Like there's going to be all of those aspects. Another important thing that I think everybody has to think about is human in the loop, or the feedback from humans that are going to be using your products. Really the best way and the fastest way for you to realize how well AI is working for you is to get feedback from humans. So as you build your application, think about how do you acquire that feedback. And in some cases, it's going to be explicit, like the classical thing of thumbs up or thumbs down, or perhaps getting some explicit feedback from the user. But in some cases, you can learn a lot just by understanding how is the user interacting with the AI, how many turns does it take for the human to get the answer that it needs, how is the language of the human changing over time and evolving? Is he getting happier and more satisfied, or is he getting upset and annoyed? And so there is a lot of information that can come from the feedback aspects of it. So thinking about that is going to be important as well.
So Luis, you've talked about lots of things there for organizations to consider, and you mentioned, and as I think we all know, the field is changing at an amazingly fast pace. So what else should organizations and people bear in mind going forward as AI changes? I mean, as much as you're able to tell, given that this is changing so much.
Yes, I mean, as you said, Sarah, the field is evolving very, very rapidly. I think a couple of constant things that we should just keep in mind are the capabilities of these AI models are just going to continue increasing dramatically from now on. So like everybody got super excited when they saw ChatGPT, which was running GPT 3.5. And then a couple of months later, people go like even more excited when they saw GPT 4. And like that continuum is just gonna be true between now and as far as we can look into the future. So if anything today, it seems that it's still, it's like, like this AI thing still is not able to do it well, or it's still too hard to be able to get it to do it. Like all of that, like the things that are hard today are going to get easy soon, and the things that don't work today are going to work relatively soon as well. So let's keep that in mind. And the other thing that people should assume is that the cost of these AI models and using these AI models in your applications is going to decrease as well. So, and we have seen that over the past year. The cost of things like GPT 3.5 and 4, like they have gone down substantially, thanks to engineering improvements, both at the infrastructure side and the hardware, as well as on the software, as well as even in the model itself. So we can expect the cost to continue going down, which is a good thing, because that means that more people and more organizations are going to be able to use this in more scenarios, and they're going to benefit even more from this. And that's something that we're working very, very hard as well, like continuing decreasing the cost, even as the capabilities increase. So I would say just keep your mind open, assume that capability is going to increase, cost is going to decrease, and go and be ambitious about what you want to go and achieve. It's fine to be pragmatic and scope and start small, because that's how you can really make some meaningful progress. But like move quickly from there and start and get into the ambitious areas, because as we said, everything is moving very, very quickly.
Luis, I know you're very, very busy, so thank you very much for taking the time to join me and talk to us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
And to everybody at home who's tuned in today to this first episode of Copilot Lead Speak, I want to thank you. We've got a lot of exciting episodes coming up where we're going to be talking to lots of different AI security experts, both within Microsoft and in industry. So hopefully you can join us again. Until next time, take care.